So, we're just going to begin by giving ourselves a genuine welcome. So if you can just imagine that you're treating yourself like your best friend that just walked through the door that you haven't seen in a long time. Just imagine that you can embrace your own heart that way. You can embrace your own personality that way, just welcoming yourself to this space, to this time, to this moment, and to this breath. So let's take a deep breath together, breathing in and blowing out. And just already noticing how that little bit of intention shifts things for you and for the room. Just feeling us all being drawn closer to a peaceful center, closer to love. And I'd like to invite now what I like to call our family of light. So my family of light and the family of light of everybody in this room, if you feel comfortable doing that, just kind of invite your own spiritual guidance team as I say this out loud. So just inviting angels to join us. Just feeling them step in lovingly, surrounding the circle, perhaps even in the middle of the circle. Any spirit guides who would like to be here to contribute, thank you. Any ascended masters or master teachers, we invite you to join our circle. We invite the energies of Mother Earth and her creatures and the custodians of the earth, the fairies, gnomes. I don't always invite them, but they wanted to come, so okay, hi guys. And any loved ones who have passed on that would like to be here to contribute to the message, to the healing, and also maybe to receive healing back. We invite you and welcome you. Thank you. And all of the infinite guidance that goes unnamed or that we don't yet have a name for, just we acknowledge that presence. Thank you. So the first being that's showing up for me, for the group, is an angel. I'm not sure of her name. She has more of a feminine presence, and she's just a beautiful, bright yellow, orange, very sun-like. And she's saying she's coming to sort of bring that energy of the sun to remind us that we are always warmed, we are always in the light of the divine, that there is nowhere that we can hide where the light cannot shine upon us. And even if we're in shadow for a time, the clouds will always move. And the divine light will always return. And so she's just here to hold that light and just shining it down to each of our hearts in a very loving and beautiful way. And just saying it's always here whether it's day or night. No matter if you're in darkness in your life at this moment in time, you will always rotate to turn towards the light again. The light is always there. It cannot be any other way. It's absolute. And so just feeling the assuredness of that. Divine love is always there. It cannot be any other way. And so she's stepping back now, and stepping forward is Kwan Yin. And she has been with me for a lot of the day today. And she wants to acknowledge that there are a lot of people in this room who have worked with her, who have opened their hearts to her, and have heard her. And she's very pleased. It's making me feel emotional. She's very, very pleased to have that, to be welcomed in that way. So she's saying thank you. And the first thing she wants to say, and I think part of why I'm feeling emotional is the first thing she wants to say is, dear children, why do you break your own hearts? And so she wants to talk to us about self-compassion. So Kwan Yin is here to teach us about compassion, and often her lessons are about compassion to other creatures, to other humans, to the planet. But she wants to speak to us tonight, especially about turning that compassion inward into our own hearts, to our own souls. And she says, none of you in this room have trouble offering compassion to others. But we want you to learn how to do the same for yourself. And especially on the spiritual journey, it's very easy to judge ourselves or to set up some kind of timeline or goal for ourselves, almost as if we're trying to climb a ladder, trying to get to another level, comparing ourselves to one another. And it's not even always conscious. We might intellectually understand that that's not what we're supposed to do, but she's saying in your hearts you're still doing it. And so let's take a breath around that and just kind of feel in your heart if you know there's a place in your life that you may be turning your back on yourself in this way, that you may be breaking your own heart just a little bit, perhaps using language that isn't very kind to yourself. And it might even just be subtle. Perhaps putting expectations on yourself. She's saying people that have a connection with spirit and the divine, because they have that understanding of what the ultimate kind of feeling of love and in existing in that spiritual awakening would feel like. We have that understanding. We expect that of our human selves often, and so we kind of get reproachful when we don't act from that place all the time. And so she's saying, you chose to be here in this human body. You chose to have this human life, and so you need to also choose to accept these parts of your humanity, that you don't always act perfectly. It doesn't mean that you're any less divine. She's saying, would you look at a seed and yell at it or berate it because it's not a flower yet? And so we need to honor the parts of ourselves that are still seeds, that are then poking out of the seeds, honoring that, not getting frustrated because it's not through the soil yet, honoring the bud, and relishing in each step, and then eventually getting to enjoy the bloom. And so there's someone else stepping forward now, kind of taking over. Thank you, Kwan Yin. She's still here, but and it's an Asian man, long beard, the kind of knot at the top of his head, saying that he's Confucius. That's cool. I haven't talked to Confucius before. And so he wants to talk about, okay, so the reason Kwan Yin came first was she wants to remind us of compassion, because Confucius is going to talk to us about letting go of self-identity a little bit, and this can be really challenging. And so she's saying she wants us to listen to this with compassion and not to be kind of tensing up if we feel like we're not doing whatever Confucius is telling us we're supposed to be doing. She's like, it's okay. So I feel like he's a little more terse and a little more direct, and she's bringing in that softness for us. It's sort of like this nice balance. So he's talking about, he's leaving, picking up where she left off with the flower, and how the flower is beautiful and everybody admires the flower. But eventually the petals fall off, it shrivels up, becomes kind of ugly, doesn't look as beautiful as it once was, dissolves into the earth and becomes the earth. And so he's talking about how we become so attached to being the flower, to defining ourselves by this picture of what we are, by the personality we've developed, by the body that we're in. And he's saying those things are all fine. They're part of being human, and that's how sometimes we identify each other, how we connect with one another, and it's a valuable thing. But it's only one part of the entire life cycle of what you are. It's only one little piece of what your whole existence is. And so he wants to talk about not being afraid of the wilting and the rotting and becoming the soil. So the first thing that he's wanting us to feel is where we have hard edges around who we have defined ourselves to be. And it's almost like he's showing me an image of like a jagged rock or something like that, that there's parts of us that we're dug into these pieces of our personality, these definitions that we've either created or we've taken upon ourselves because somebody else has said this about us, or society, culture. And so he's saying, be like a piece of rock salt, showing me like a piece of pink rock salt. He said, what happens to the rock salt when you put it in the water? It starts to dissolve. But the salt isn't any less salt just because it's dissolving. It's actually just becoming more expansive. And so imagining that you can be like a piece of rock salt dissolving into the ocean. And you may not look the same always. You may not have the same defined edges always. But pieces of you will be spread throughout the entire ocean, which means you can feel and experience and be so much more. And then he's saying, but don't be afraid, because like the flower, you can reseed and reform and grow again. If you get nervous being formless and letting go of parts of those personality, it's okay to reseed and grow again. And so just asking yourself if it feels okay to just let some things dissolve. And if you can't dissolve completely into the ocean at this moment in time, that's okay. Maybe there's just a layer. Just even imagining that angel from before with the sun shining down, imagining that instead of salt, maybe you're a block of ice. And she's just melting some of those layers away, some of those hard edges, sending parts of yourself out to explore, to flow with the water. Just reminding yourself that you are part of everything, and that nothing that you've been told that you are in this human life that is limiting, any self-limiting beliefs, are less true than the part of you that is flowing out. Because there's a part of you that is always there before this body, after this body goes away. Before you were old enough to have a thought, the moment you were born, there's this part of you that's always been there. And that part will exist whether you have hard edges, whether you're a block of ice or a flower or a bud. And so there's no need to fear, because there's always that eternal piece of you that's connected to all that is. So maybe we can sit in that awareness, that security, that the sun of divine light is always with us, and that we are eternal. And so these parts that ebb and flow and get hard and resistant and then dissolve, it's all just movement, it's all just growth, it's all just flow. It doesn't change the core of who we are. It doesn't change that we are divine light and love. So I'll take a nice deep breath around that, please. Place your hand on your heart, acknowledging your eternal spirit, just feeling gratitude for that which is always there, and also offering adoration and love to your human self that sometimes has hard edges. Knowing that it doesn't always have to be that way. We are fluid creatures. And just offering gratitude to Kwan Yin. Thank you. Our sun angel, thank you. Confucius. Thank you. And when you're ready, just calling yourself back to your body, and maybe rubbing your legs, and just opening your eyes.
Thank you, Alise.
Mm-hmm.